I have done so many green card applications. So this series about marriage-based green card is all about helping you, giving you the knowledge that I have amassed during this almost 10 years. So stick around. Let's get into the I-485. If you want to kind of know the whole process, make sure you watch my previous videos on the perfect green card application recipe, and of course the I-130 and I-130A relative petitions. I am U.S. Immigration Attorney Lillian Chukwurah, and I have been helping my clients get their green cards and citizenships for themselves and their families using the U.S. immigration law system for almost 10 years now. So, first thing you need to know is this is an application to register permanent residence or adjust your status. If your spouse is physically in the U.S. and they came in with either a visa or parole, they had some form of admission or parole into the U.S., well, they can file adjustment of status, because if you are a U.S. citizen filing this application for them, they are able to file it at any point as long as they were inspected, admitted, and or paroled. If you are a permanent resident wanting to file this for your spouse must be in current status, meaning if they came in with a visa, that visa is still valid. I do not mean that the visa, the term of the visa is like 5 years. No, I mean, if they came in and the visa allows them to stay for 6 months, you are filing within that 6 months, not the 5 years that they're given for the visa itself. It's about the stay, not the actual visa itself. Okay, so if they're in valid status, you can file this green card application with your I-130 if there's a visa immediately available and if they are still within their valid stay in the U.S. So now let's get into the form. The form is the form I-485. Every single form that USCIS has instructions. So you want to make sure that you are following those instructions. If you are going to do this on your own, it can be daunting to kind of make sure that you do every single thing correct on this form, but some people do it on their own, and others that want to just have that extra confidence that everything is being done accurately, work with a lawyer like me. All right. So first thing first, over here, your attorney or accredited representative will be filling this out. If someone is helping you with your green card process and they're not willing to fill this out, run, because that means they're not willing to take responsibility for whatever they put on the form. Okay, so when we do our forms, we make sure the client reads every single line, understands every single line, and confirms the information on every single line. If someone else is doing this for you and they're not going through that process with you, run. Okay, don't just sign anything. Make sure you're reviewing it before you sign, because you are on the hook for anything you file with USCIS. You cannot typically blame it on someone that didn't have their names on it. Okay, if I have my name on the form and it's a mistake that I made, I can say, hey, I prepared the form. This was my fault. Don't blame the client for this, right? So that gives you an extra layer of protection as you're going through your green card journey. Anyway, let's get into the forms. Let me stop. Let's get into the forms. So first thing first, current name. Remember, this form is filled out by the person trying to get permanent residency. Not the U.S. citizen and not the permanent resident, but the person that's trying to get their permanent residency, that's trying to get their green card, is the one filling this out. Okay, so when they ask about you, they mean you, the non-U.S. citizen, the non-permanent resident. Provide your information. Okay, so your name. This is going to be, the first parts of this is going to be similar to the I-130. So if you haven't watched that video, go ahead and watch it. But it is going to be very similar. So your name and then all other names you have ever used in your life. Okay. They give you a lot of space for that. If you have ever had an A number, they want that as well. Remember, that's the alien registration number. If you're a U.S. citizen, you don't know what that is. But if you're another U.S. citizen and you've ever filed anything with USCIS, you most likely have an A number. Okay. your date of birth, your sex, where you were born, okay? Because, oh, and they also ask your country of citizenship, because sometimes you're born in one country but you're actually a citizen of another country. So for example, I've seen people born in Brazil but they're not actually Brazilian citizens, okay? Or someone born in Saudi Arabia but they're not Saudi citizens, okay? So it's really important that when you're filling this out, you're not just automatically put in your country of birth. You're actually paying attention to make sure that your country of birth is also your country of citizenship. Okay, if you've ever had an alien registration number or US online account number, you're going to be filling that out here. Although this has your USCIS online account number, your form cannot be filed online. Okay, but once it's filed, it can show up on your My USCIS online account. So if you have it, put it here so that everything is kind of put together. All right. Your mailing address. Again, your mailing address can be different from your physical address. This is just a safe place for you to get mail. And then you also have this option if you are filing a VAWA application, UT visa, all of that, you can put a safe mailing address. But if you're filing a marriage-based application, right? If you're filing a marriage-based application, you want to make sure that you are, okay? You want to make sure that you are including a mailing address where your forms can be, where a response to your forms can be sent, all right? If you've ever had a Social Security number, you want to make sure you put that here. So have you ever had a Social Security card? If it's yes, you need to put in the number. If it's no, you can then say whether you want them to issue you one. This is a great thing because this helps you skip a step. So usually once you get your green card, you have to go to the Social Security Administration to ask them to give you a Social Security card or to update the card you already have. But by checking yes here, you're basically skipping that step and having USCIS update the Social Security Administration, and they will automatically or should automatically send you that Social Security card once your green card application is approved. Then this part is super important, right? They want to know, how did you come into the US the last time you came in? Because they want to make sure that you were admitted or paroled, okay? They want to make sure. So you want to make sure that you're putting that information here. Where did you last arrive, the dates, everything, okay? And then here it's asking you if you were inspected at a port of entry, if you were inspected and paroled, right? Inspected and admitted means that you came in with a visa or you were waived through. Inspected and paroled means you came in with some form of parole, humanitarian parole, Haitian parole, things like that. And then there's this option that you came in without admission or parole. We'll talk about that in a little bit. All right. So if that is the case, there's basically one situation in a marriage-based green card process where you can say yes to 25C and still be able to get your green card. All right. There's only like one situation where you can do that. Then they're asking for your I-94 if you have one. If you were paroled, you may not readily have that I-94, but you have your parole document. So you want to make sure that you include in that. Your current immigration status. Again, some people, their status is going to change while they're in the US, so you can put that. One thing to keep in mind is if you apply for the new Biden administration parole in place, you are going to get a new I-94 once that parole is approved. So when you're filing this, we can now put that new one and say that you are in parole status. Isn't that great? So, and then over here, it wants to know how you qualify for your green card, right? Why should we give you a green card? What's the category? So your category, marriage-based green card, right? Immediate relative of a U.S. citizen, I-130, or you could be the relative of a lawful permanent resident. Again, this is only if you are still in valid status. okay, then you can select that one and you can adjust your status in the US. If you're no longer in valid status and you're married to a permanent resident, you have to wait for your permanent resident spouse to become a US citizen, and then they can file for you. All right. Now, remember I said that if you entered without inspection, that there may be a possibility for you to get your green card, even if you enter without inspection. The only way is this right here. Are you applying based on 245I? I can make a video later on that, but this is not typical, right? There's not a lot of people that qualify for 245I, but it is a possibility if you do qualify for that, and you entered without inspection, without parole, and you qualify for the 245I, you can still do this even if you know, you entered without inspection. So I can do another video on that, but let's focus on this. So marriage based, you're not really filling this out because your spouse is the principal applicant. You're not, you know, filing under another person. And then if you have ever applied for an immigrant visa, this is not asking if you've ever applied for a visa ever. It's saying, have you ever applied for an immigrant visa? Meaning a permanent resident, okay? That's what this question is specifically asking for, because I've had people say yes, and it was like they applied for a B2 visa. That's not what this is asking for. This is asking if you have ever applied for permanent residency at an embassy or consulate abroad. This is also not asking if you have applied for a green card in the US. Okay, so, and then again, your address history. This will just mirror what you did on your I-130A. So your address history for the past 5 years, your employment history for the past 5 years, just like the I-130A. They just want you to give them that information. Again, everything you put on your forms can be used at your interview. So you want to make sure that you and your spouse are on the same page. In case you do have an interview, your forms are going to be used when the author is questioning you, okay, to make sure you two are in a marital relationship. And then over here, it's going to ask for your most recent employment outside of the US. Again, if you look at your I-130A, that's there. So you don't have to do double the work because you already did the work one time. You can just copy what you already did. But it's really important. So here's the thing. Because it asks you the same question on multiple forms, you kind of get to review the things again, okay? Because that's the great thing. Because sometimes you miss it on the first form and then you're looking at the second one and you're like, oh, wait, that's not correct. So it's good that they ask it again because you want to just make sure the information is accurate and we are reviewing every single form. You're not skipping over things because you think it's correct. No, I want you to review everything. When I send it to my clients, I want them to review every single line and let me know if there's anything that, you know, that needs to be changed. And then the information about the parents, they're asking for their current name and if they have a different name when they were born. So if let's say your mother took on your father's last name, they want her last name when she was born. So you want to put that here. If your parents changed their name, legally changed their name at any point in their life, you want to also put their birth name in here. So date of birth, if you don't know this information, you can also say unknown, right? If you don't know the information and your parents are deceased or you just don't have any contact with them, you can say unknown in some of these things, okay? The same thing for your other parents. And then how many times have you been married? USCIS does not play. They're going to ask you again. So how many times have you been married? And here's the thing. It includes annulled marriages. So even if the marriage is annulled and it doesn't seem like you should be including it because it's not really a marriage anymore under state law or whatever. No, it's still a marriage. They still want to know about it. If, let's say, you and your current spouse were married before, but you got divorced and ended up getting back together later on, that counts as 2 marriages, not 1. So even though it's the same person, you were married twice. So you want to count them twice. All right. So your current spouse's information, date of birth, where you got married, all of that. You want to include that, place of marriage. And then if they are applying with you, no, this is a marriage-based green card. Your spouse is a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. They are not applying with you. And then prior legal name, right? Legal name of your prior spouse. If you've ever been married before, again, this includes if it's the same spouse, but you two were married before, got divorced, got married again, you're including them twice, okay? And you need to include where the marriage took place, all of that, because guess what? USCIS wants to do a full background check on you. So they're going to ask you all the questions that they want. And then here it asks for your all. I'm just going to highlight this because some of y'all out here don't listen. All your living children. Okay, I don't care if they don't live with you. I don't care if they're married. I don't care if you haven't spoken to them in 10 years. They are still your children. USCIS wants to know about them. Okay, all of them. Doesn't matter if they're adults. Doesn't matter if they're minors. Doesn't matter if they live in another state, in another country. Doesn't matter. USCIS wants to know who they are. So you will put how many children you have. All of them. All of them. All of them, and their name, date of birth, country of birth, and if they're applying with you. Most of the time this is a no on the applying with you, but you need to include all of your children, even the ones that are U.S. citizens. Let me just mention that again. Even the ones that are U.S. citizens, you need to include them, okay? Even if you never plan on filing for them, you need to include them, because guess what? USCIS does not care. They ask you for all your children, okay? There's no exceptions. Unless your child is deceased, their name needs to be on this application. I can't say that enough because that has gotten so many people into trouble. So I always have to like talk about it. All right. So here, your biographics, again, just like the I-130 information, you need your biographics. Like, you know, make sure you are putting this. You still are going to have biometrics, so they're going to get your fingerprint and your picture, but how tall are you? How much you weigh? They're not going to have a scale there to weigh you, but just be as accurate as possible. And then over here, have you ever been a member or in any way associated with any organization, association, fund, foundation, party, club, society, or a similar group in the U.S. or anywhere else in the world, including any military service? Listen, if you have been in any club, like, okay, I'm Nigerian, so I'm always going to go there because that's what's in my... So in Nigeria, we have this club called People's Club. If you've ever been a member of the People's Club, you need to put it here. And you need to then go and say when you were a member. So if you're no longer a member, there needs to be an end date. If you're still a member, you're putting that. So whatever club, society, organization that you're a part of, you need to make sure you are putting that here. Because again, if USCIS wants to do a full background check, they want everything, okay? And then now they get into the security questions, the criminal questions. They want to know if you have ever been denied admission into the United States. Have you ever been denied a visa? Have you ever worked in the U.S. without authorization? If you're in the U.S. and you've been in the U.S. for over 10 years, actually over a year, and you're not a minor, you don't have a spouse that's just paying everything for you, USCIS knows you're working. Don't lie and say you're not working, please. Okay? Even if you're not working with papers, even if you're working under the table, please say yes. Because if your spouse is a US citizen, it does not matter if you say yes to, have you ever worked without authorization? It's waived because your spouse is a US citizen. That's why it's best when you're doing this that you're doing it with a US citizen spouse. But if your spouse is a permanent resident, please do not work without authorization. So one, you have to be in valid status, but two, you cannot work without authorization because guess what? That makes you not eligible for adjustment of status if your spouse is a permanent resident. So keep that in mind. Have you ever violated the terms and conditions of your non-immigrant status if you overstayed your visa? The answer to this question is yes. I've had people say no, and the officer just look at them like, you came in with a visa, you overstayed the visa. Isn't that a violation of the terms of your visa? Like, some officers, they understand that it's a confusing question and they will try to walk you to it, but if you want to listen, if you're filling this out on your own and you want to guarantee that you're going to have an interview, please answer these questions incorrectly. Right? Say you've never violated the terms of your non-immigrant status when it's clear that you have. You will have an interview. So have you ever been in removal, exclusion, they just want to know, have you ever been in immigration court where the US government tried to get you deported? Ever? Right? Have you ever been given a final order of deportation? Right? All of these things matter because if you have, there's certain things you have to do first before your permanent residency can be approved. So they really want to know, so they make sure you have taken those steps. Have you ever had a final order of exclusion, deportation reinstated? Important, because if it's been reinstated, they want to know because there's steps you have to take. Have you ever held permanent residency status, which was later rescinded, meaning the US government gave you permanent residency but then took it back? They want to know, because then they will want to know why and why they should give you one now when they took it back before. You see? Have you ever been granted voluntary departure? If you have never been in immigration court proceedings, these questions are most likely going to be no, but there are people that have been or are currently in immigration court, so you want to make sure that you are answering those questions correctly. If you have ever had a J, non-immigrant visa, they want to know, because they want to know if you had a 2-year residency. So some J visa recipients have a 2-year residency, meaning they come to the US on their J. When their J is finished, they are supposed to leave the US and stay outside of the US in their foreign country for 2 years before they can apply for another visa to the US. That is just a condition of their visa. And if they did not follow that, they cannot get an adjustment of status unless they meet certain requirements, okay? So it's really important that these questions are answered correctly, because again, if you had a J or you didn't have a 2-year residency, and you said you had a 2-year residency, and you didn't include the thing that shows that you qualify, interview. Like automatic interview, because there's no way the officer can approve you. Okay, so really important that as you're filling these out, that you are following the instructions, that you are looking at the law to see if you meet any of the exceptions to the rule. Okay, so have you ever been arrested, cited, charged, or detained for any reason by any law enforcement, including immigration? For those that don't know, if you've ever been detained by US immigration, the answer to this question is yes. Okay, the answer to this question is yes. Even though you were let go, right, and they gave you parole after, you were still detained. At a minimum, you were detained. All right. And then, have you ever committed a crime of any kind, even if you were not arrested? I have not seen one person say yes to that question. And every time an officer asks it at an interview, I typically ask the officer, have you had anyone say yes to that question? And their answer is almost always no. Okay, their answer is almost always no. They have not had anyone actually say yes, that they have committed a crime that they were not charged with. Okay, have you ever pled guilty? This is all about criminal offenses. Have you ever been punished? Have you ever been accused of a crime, right? Have you ever been the defendant in a criminal proceedings? Like, they really want to break it down for you and see if you have any bars to you becoming a permanent resident, right? To you adjusting your status. So, for example, have you violated any controlled substance laws? So if you have even marijuana possession, there is a waiver if it's under 30 grams for personal use. But if it's like intent to distribute, there's no waiver. So they know you don't qualify. And if they see that you said yes to any of these, they are going to expect some court documents to back it up, to say that you still qualify. So we literally go through these line by line, question by question with our clients, because if you have ever been charged with anything, we need that certified copy showing that you still qualify, or even if it shows that you were convicted of something and it wasn't just dismissed, we want to know so that I can make legal arguments on the front end saying whether you qualify or not, right? So I don't want you filing anything until you know that that criminal charge that you had is not going to affect your ability to adjust your status. And if it is going to affect it, that we are, getting you together with a criminal lawyer to try and see if you qualify for any post-conviction reliefs that will either lessen the charge or take it away completely. So there's steps to this, there's layers to this, okay? And these questions are not by accident. It may seem redundant, right? It may seem like they're asking you the same question over and over in different ways. Yes, that's the point. That's the point, because they want to make sure that they have all the information. And if you answer one of these questions incorrectly, now they have you on misrepresentation. Yeah. So that's why they are very detailed in these questions, okay? Have you ever been convicted of 2 or more offenses? Again, are you eligible? That's what they're trying to figure out. Because if any of these is yes, you now have to prove that you are still eligible, even with it, okay? Trafficking, again, there's no there's no waiver for trafficking, okay? There's no waiver for that. So they really want to know, so they can just put your application to the side. Are you the spouse or son or daughter of a foreign national who illicitly trafficked or aided in the illicit trafficking of a controlled substance? So not did you do it, but are you the spouse or child of someone that did it? They really want to know, because the reason they want to know is, were you supported with that illegal, illicit drug money, right? Is that what you were supported with? Is that what you're applying with? They want to know. Have you ever engaged in prostitution, or are you coming to the US to engage in it? They want to know, because that's illegal. And if you're coming here to do illegal stuff, you're not going to get approved, okay? And if the answer is yes to have been a prostitute in the past, there may be a waiver, so they want to know that as well. Have you directly or indirectly paid for a prostitute? Again, it's illegal, so they want to know. All right, criminal activity. They really want to know in every single way possible if you have been involved in criminal activity. of any kind that makes you ineligible to come into the US. And then these are the security questions. Have you violated, like, do you want to violate or sabotage or commit espionage? Like, are you coming here to spy on the US? Right? Are you coming here to export sensitive information from the US to your foreign country? Basically, are you a spy? And are you coming here to be a spy? That's the question. And I'm saying it and laughing, but seriously, that is the question. All right. Have you ever, so are you engaged in or upon entry into the US, do you intend to engage in activity that could have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States? Are you coming here to mess up our country and or mess up our relationship with other countries? They want to know, okay? They want to know. Like I said, criminal history is what they really care about, right? Have you committed any crime anywhere? Have you assisted in hijacking, kidnapping, political assassinations, right? Have you helped someone that does that, right? Not only have you done it, but have you helped either by money or given something of value? Because if you have, you don't qualify unless you qualify for a waiver or an exception. All right. So again, more of that, more of the same thing. They really care. Okay. So you want to make sure that you are going through these one at a time and not rushing through it. That's the other thing. Don't rush through it, because when you rush through it, guess what happens? Guess what happens? You accidentally click something, right? You click yes when it should be no, or no when it should be yes. So you want to make sure that you are going through it line by line, and making sure that you are not answering any of these questions incorrectly. Now, after all that criminal history questions, now they get into, are you subject to the public charge grounds? For a marriage-based green card application, the answer to this is yes, you are subject to it. Okay? Marriage-based green card applications are subject to the public charge grounds. And then you need to answer questions about your household. Remember, your household size is you, your spouse, and anyone else that lives in that household, or people that show up on your tax return. That is your household size. And then your household income is all those people, how much do they make a year? Right? All those people in your household, what is their, how much is their, all their assets? Right? And then this is about liabilities, how much loans, credit card, all of that. And then this is about you, right? This is about what is the highest degree of education completed. This is about you. If you have any certifications, they just want to see that, is there things in your background that will help show that you can get a job, things like that. Then over here, have you ever received SSI, which is cash assistance, right? Cash benefits. Yes or no? Have you ever been in a long-term institution at government expense? So this is like if you have been institutionalized, mental health or things like that, you want to document that and have those ready to go. And then illegal entries and immigration violations. Like I said, they want to know all these things because that's what's going to tell them whether you qualify or not. Okay, it's really important. Again, take it slow. Take it slow. You don't want to rush this. All right. Have you ever failed or refused to attend? So if you have an in absentia order of removal, you want to pay attention, because this is going to this can affect you and your ability to get a green card. So I when it comes to this, we, again, line by line, you need to answer these questions line by line. And if anything sticks out to you and you're not sure, we are going through your immigration history. We are pulling your court records. We're pulling anything we can to just confirm that it is not a problem. All right. Have you ever submitted fraudulent or counterfeit document to any U.S. government official to obtain or attempt to obtain any immigration benefit? Listen, if you have ever applied for a visa and say you were married when you're not, the answer to this is yes. If you have ever applied for a benefit that you did not qualify for, I know a lot of people that applied for the legalization when they actually didn't qualify because they weren't in the US at the time frame that's required, and they lied about it just to get their just to get a work permit. And then guess what happened? Their case still got denied. But now they qualify for a green card through marriage. What's going to happen? When they come to this question, they have to say yes because they did, right? They presented fake documents to say that they were in the US when they weren't, and now they have a fraud on their case, and they're gonna need a waiver, right? Have you ever lied? Again, same example. You say you were here when you were not, just to get an immigration benefit. Even if the case was denied, you still have to say yes because you tried, right? You tried, you presented it, it just didn't work. Okay. Have you ever falsely claimed to be a US citizen? This is huge. Because if this is yes, for most people, except for people that meet like tiny exceptions, this is going to lead to you not being able to get a green card, ever. Okay? Have you ever been a stowaway? Again, if this is a yes, no green card in the US. You can go outside of the US and go through that process with the 601A waiver, but not adjust your status in the US. All right. Have you ever tried to help someone come to the US illegally, smuggle them across the border, things like that? All right. And then, have you ever been deported, been in the US without inspection? Again, this is all about your immigration history. So you want to take this slow and answer all of these questions. And then here, we're getting to other miscellaneous things. Do you plan on practicing polygamy? Again, things that are not legal in the US. Are you planning on doing those things? Okay. All right. Have you ever assisted in detaining a U.S. citizen child outside of the U.S.? Again, these are things that disqualify you, so they want to know. Have you ever voted? Because if you voted, then you claim to be a U.S. citizen. So it's another way of asking you for if you've ever falsely claimed to be a U.S. citizen. Issues. Have you ever been a U.S. citizen and then renounced your citizenship to avoid being taxed in the U.S.? Well, guess what? Now you are going to have a problem trying to get a green card in the U.S. All right. So have you ever been trained for the Army, basically, on the grounds that you are a foreign national? So apply for exemption or discharge from training or service in the U.S. on the grounds that you are a foreign national. Have you ever been relieved or discharged from such training because you are a foreign national? Have you ever been convicted of desertion from the U.S. Armed Forces? They really care about your military history. All right. So down here, accommodations. So if you have any of these things and you need accommodations for your interview, please ask for the accommodations. So if you need a sign language interpreter, if you are blind, and whatever you need for your interview, right? Whatever disabilities or impairments you have, you need to ask for the accommodations. It is your right. Okay, you have ADA rights to accommodations. So, for example, if you are not deaf but you're hard of hearing, you can include that here and explain what accommodations you will need that will help with the interview. So again, really important. And then over here, can you read and write, understand English? your information. If you use an interpreter, your interpreter's information. And then down here, your preparer information. So for my clients, the preparer is me, because I'm going through every single application, right? Right. I'm the attorney in my office, and we work together with the client to get everything done and filed. So that's the preparer information. If your preparer is not including their information on the preparer section and making it seem like you prepared everything yourself, run. They don't want to take any responsibilities. Okay. When I put my name here, I'm taking responsibility for the form and for your case. Right. And also I'm saying that I represent you throughout the process, not just in filling out the form. All right. And that is the I-485. Over here, do not sign this before your interview, okay? Don't sign it and send it in. This is done at your interview. If your interview is waived, the officer will just make a note of it on the application. But if you have an interview, you will sign this page, and the officer will sign it at the interview. So that is the I-485, the actual adjustment of status green card application that we have been talking about. If you are watching this and you're like, oh, that's a lot, right? That's a lot of legal things that I need to know, legal arguments to be made. Please, 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 please schedule a strategy session. Let's talk about it. Make sure you qualify and talk about how I can help you through this process. Again, these videos are to show you what that process looks like, what the forms look like. Do not get overwhelmed. I am here to help, so feel free to schedule that strategy session. You can do it by going to my website, lilylegal.com, and clicking on Contact Us. That way you can schedule a date and time that works best for you for us to chat. You can also call my office at 508-443-1788.